Okay, try and picture this. There's this swirling mist, right, hanging heavy over a cold, gray sea. You start hearing oars, that rhythmic dip, and then the whisper of a huge sail catching wind.
Yeah.
And out of the fog comes this shape, low, lean, powerful-looking, fearsome carved head at the front.
The Longship?
Exactly. Not just a boat, is it?
Yeah.
It feels like. Well, the engine of the whole Viking Age.
It absolutely was. I mean, forget just transport. These ships were Viking power. Their reach, their whole identity, really.
Like ultimate tool?
Yeah, forged over centuries, trial and error, perfectly suited to a really challenging world. Fjords, rivers, open ocean.
And that adaptability, that's what we're diving into today, right? We've got all this great source material from you, the listener.
Yep.
And the mission, basically, to get past that sort of iconic image and dig into the actual engineering, the smart, sometimes hidden design choices that made them, well, legendary.
How did they manage it all with essentially the same hull design?
Right. How did they master shallow rivers in the North Atlantic?
It comes down to this masterpiece of pragmatic Norse engineering, seriously pragmatic. Every curve, every single plank, how it was fastened, it all had a purpose.
Learned over generations, living with the water.
Exactly. It's this blend of incredible hands-on knowledge and just brilliant practical thinking. No theories, just what worked.
Okay, so let's unpack that genius. The sources jump on one thing right away.
Yeah.
The construction. It was revolutionary.
Yeah.
Clinker built.
Right. So unlike, say, carvel construction, where planks are smooth, edge to edge,
Yeah.
the Viking way, clinker, used overlapping planks. And these weren't just sawed planks. They were often split or riven from big oak trees to follow the green.
Riven. Okay. Stronger that way.
Stronger and more flexible. Then they fastened these overlapping planks together with iron rivets. Little washers called roves were hammered on the inside ends to clinch them tight.
So it's not just sticking wood together. The way they did it, this overlapping and riveting.
Yeah.
The sources stress the result. Strong, yes, but the key word seems to be flexible.
That's the absolute key insight. Don't think rigid, like a modern hull.
Yeah.
Think more like overlapping scales that can shift and move a little.
Controlled suppleness.
Exactly. A hull, maybe only an inch thick in places, could flex with the waves, absorb the shock instead of fighting it and potentially breaking, made them incredibly tough, seaworthy in that rough North Atlantic.
And okay, that flexibility.
Yeah.
It ties directly into another defining feature, right? That crazy shallow draft.
Precisely. You combine that lightweight but strong clinker hull with a fairly wide beam for stability.
Right.
And many of these ships needed incredibly little water, often under a meter.
Less than a meter, seriously. For something that could cross an ocean, that's kind of mind-blowing.
It is. But think strategically, what does that shallow draft buy you?
Well, you're not stuck needing deep ports. You can go anywhere. Up rivers.
Straight up rivers, turn inland waterways into Viking highways, land on beaches without warning.
Surprise attack.
Exactly. And navigate coastal areas, fjords, places impossible for deeper ships. It fed right into the raiding tactics, speed, surprise, but also trade and exploration inland.
Okay, so flexible hull, super shallow draft, and the overall shape, often double-ended, the sources mention.
Yeah.
Symmetrical.
Yeah, another nod to pure practicality. Maneuverability.
Meaning
They didn't have to waste time turning the whole ship around. In a tight spot, maybe after a raid, they could just back paddle with the oars. Reverse direction instantly.
gain vital seconds.
Yeah.
Escape. Clever.
Very.
So revolutionary hull, shallow draft, quick pivots. But the range, how do they cover those huge distances? Surely not just rowing all the time.
No, rowing was vital, but the main engine for distance was that single, massive square sail.
Huge, you say.
The sources talk about sails, often made of sturdy wool, potentially over 100 square meters on a big ship, very efficient with a following wind or a beam wind.
Wool sails.
Yeah.
That's another amazing detail.
Yeah.
But okay, the dual system sail and oar, that was the adaptability superpower, wasn't it?
That's exactly it. Sail gave them range and speed on the open sea, wind permitting.
Right.
But if the wind died, or they needed to be quiet for stealthy approach, or just needed precise control against a current or in a narrow fjord.
Out come the oars.
Out come the oars. And the sources mention things like oar ports becoming common, allowed oars to be used quickly even while sailing, gave a better rowing angle. This combination meant they were almost never stuck, powerful and adaptable.
And that adds up to speed. Pretty impressive speed for the time. What are we talking?
Estimates vary, naturally, but maybe 5 to 10 knots average. Could potentially hit 13 to 17 knots with ideal wind and sea conditions.
Wow. fast enough to outrun pursuers or just appear out of nowhere.
Definitely. And that speed and versatility, it leads us to understand that Viking ship isn't just one thing. There was specialization, especially as the Viking Age went on.
Right, not a one-size-fits-all deal. You had the true longships built for war and speed.
Yes, and even within that category, different terms. The longest, narrowest, purely for war, might be called skjar.
Skjar.
Then the famous ones, the ones you picture with the dragon heads, the drakar. Those were often chieftains' ships, symbols of power.
The iconic image.
And then slightly smaller longships, maybe called snakes, still fast, carrying warriors, good for raiding. Lots of oarsmen using the sail too.
But Vikings weren't only about raiding, despite the reputation. They traded, settled, explored huge distances. Needed a different tool for that.
Absolutely. That's where the gnar comes in. The sources describe it as shorter, broader, deeper in the hull than a longship.
So trading off speed and shallow draft for.
Cargo space. Sheer volume. Could carry maybe up to 24 tons, displace around 50 tons. Big difference.
Okay, so the longship is the sleek war machine, the fast explorer. The gnar is the workhorse, the freighter, the moving van for settlers.
That's a good way to put it. The gnar is what made those regular trips across the North Atlantic feasible, moving livestock, goods, families to Iceland, Greenland, even North America.
Relied more on the sail then. Fewer oars.
Almost entirely sail power. Oars were just for maneuvering at harbors or if it was dead calm. The sources also mention the carve, kind of a medium all-purpose ship.
A hybrid.
Sort of. Broader than a longship, but shallower than a gnar. Could do coastal raiding, general transport, good in really shallow water too.
Yeah.
Versatile.
This range of types, it just hammers home how central shipbuilding was to everything in Viking society, doesn't it?
Oh, completely. Not just the military side. The whole economy, their expansion, their survival.
It really was the foundation.
Yeah.
Enabled the raids, sure, but also those huge trade networks, Baltic to Byzantium,
Yeah.
and settling lands nobody in Europe had reached before.
Across the Atlantic, yeah. Incredible reach.
And speaking of crossing oceans, how did they navigate? This is before magnetic compasses, accurate charts, speed logs.
Right. This is where the sources point to a system built on just incredible empirical knowledge, observation, less about instruments, more about reading the world around them. The sun's position during the day, stars at night, obviously, but also prevailing winds, wave patterns. They'd know the feel of waves coming from different directions, cloud formations that signal land or weather changes.
Wow. And wildlife, too.
Definitely. Bird behavior, which birds fly out from land in the morning and back at night. Whale migration routes, feeding grounds near coasts. It's deep environmental knowledge.
Almost like a symbiotic relationship with the sea and sky.
I bet.
Handed down knowledge.
Built up over generations. Now, there's debate about tools, of course. The sources mention things like sundials and the really intriguing idea of sunstones.
Yes, the sunstone. What's the theory there?
Well, a wooden disc found in Greenland was suggested as maybe a sun compass, but the markings are a bit inconsistent. So many experts doubt it was for precise navigation. Could have been something else.
Okay.
The sunstone is even more debated. The idea is maybe using crystals like calcite, which can polarize light. So potentially they could find the sun's direction even through fog or cloud cover.
Pierce the fog. Literally find the sun. That sounds like magic.
Potentially. But, and the sources are clear on this, there's no definitive archaeological proof they were widely used for navigation. And how reliable would they be compared to just keen observation? We don't know for sure.
So, fascinating possibilities. But the core skill was that deep, inherited observation.
Seems to be the consensus, yeah. That was the reliable method.
Still, just astonishing. Voyages across the North Atlantic, down Russian rivers to the Black Sea, relying on that intuition and knowledge.
It's a huge testament to their skill, and of course to the capability of the ships themselves. I mean, the range was immense. North America to the Mediterranean and deep into Eastern Europe.
Now, beyond the engineering, the navigation, these ships were clearly more than just tools, weren't they? The sources emphasize a deep symbolic meaning.
Oh, absolutely. Far more than just boats. They were woven into their cosmology, their social structure. A ship meant status, identity. It was even seen as a bridge between worlds, in life and, crucially, in death.
You mean the ship burials, like Oserberg-Gokstad? Those incredible finds.
Exactly. Those weren't just ways to dispose of an old ship. They were major rituals, burying important people in their ships, often with tons of grave goods, animals, sometimes even sacrificed people.
Reflecting the idea the ship would carry them to the afterlife.
Precisely. It shows the immense value, practical and spiritual, they placed on these vessels. They were companions in life and death.
And the decoration, those famous dragon heads, the carvings. not just for looks.
No, multi-layered meaning there. The sources suggest they were meant to ward off hostile spirits when they approached land.
Protection magic.
Sorta,
Yeah.
and definitely to intimidate enemies. But also, they embodied the power and spirit of the ship itself. And, of course, the quality of the carving, that intricate Oseberg-style animal patterns you see that broadcasted the owner's wealth and status loudly.
Like a floating billboard of power.
Pretty much. A magnificent ship, elaborately carved, demanded respect. It was a huge status symbol.
There are descriptions, right, from that 11th century monk, talking about gold lions, bird-shaped vanes, bronze drakes, even silver and gold figures on some ships.
Yeah, those accounts really drive home that these were functional, yes, but also works of art. Symbols of immense power and prestige.
They really were icons of the age, weren't they? A physical manifestation of Viking skill, ambition, belief, everything.
Couldn't have put it better myself.
Okay, so if we were to pull this all together, the key takeaways about the legendary Viking longship, what stands out most?
Well, first, that revolutionary design idea. Speed, shallow draft, flexibility, all made possible by that genius clinker construction, the supple hulls.
Right. Then the dual propulsion sail and oar. Super adaptable.
Crucial adaptability, yeah. Mastered all kinds of water. And the specialization, the different types. Warships like Skjar and Drakkar, the Cargonar, the versatile Carve, each with its role.
Can't forget the navigation. Mostly that deep observational skill, even with a debate about possible tools like sunstones. Incredible range because of it.
Enabled those huge voyages, Baltic to North America and beyond. And finally, that deep symbolic weight.
More than just wooden rivets. Woven into life, death, status, spirituality.
Absolutely. So you reiterate the impact. The longship, in all its forms, was the engine of the Viking Age. Enabled raids, yes, but also exploration, settlement, trade. Changed history.
It really makes you appreciate the mix. Practical engineering, amazing adaptability, and profound cultural meaning all in one vessel. No wonder we're still fascinated.
And maybe that leaves us with a thought for you, the listener. Think about how central the longship was to the Vikings. It wasn't just a tool for travel or war. It was tied into status, belief, art, even the afterlife. Does that challenge how we often see technology today purely as a separate functional thing? Or can the things we create still hold that kind of deep integrated meaning in our lives and culture? Something to ponder.